Hi friends, and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Brian and I'm your host. And this episode picks up where we left off in episode 31. We're on our second van life vacation of the summer, this time to New England and Eastern Canada. We had already started out with the Finger Lakes and Niagara Falls, and then visited Toronto and the Thousand Islands. And in this episode, we're going to continue up the St. Lawrence River. We're going to stop first at Ottawa and then Gatineau Park. So Ottawa is the capital of Canada. We woke up at 6:30 in the morning. It was a cool sunny day. First thing we did, of course, was go to Tim Hortons. If you aren't familiar with Tim Hortons, or Timmy's as I call it, Timmy's is the Canadian version of Dunkin' Donuts, only far, far superior. And my favorite donut is the Canadian maple donut. It has a maple glaze on the top and then vanilla custard filling on the inside. So after leaving our site, we drove to the outskirts of Ottawa and parked at Hogsback Falls and the Rideau Canal. The Rideau Canal was an engineering feat that helped to connect the Ottawa River to Lake Ontario. And there's a small waterfall there and the beginning of the canal. Then we drove into the city, and after finding parking, we walked to Parliament Hill. The nice thing about Ottawa is all the historic sites are centrally located at the top of the hill, and it's easy access there. Ottawa is a fairly small city compared to Toronto and Montreal, or cities in the United States, so it's easy to get around on foot. And at Parliament Hill, we first walked to the west side and saw the Confederation Office Building. And then in the center, on top of Parliament Hill, there are three huge historic office buildings. One of them is called the West Block. And then the one in the middle that has the famous Peace Tower is called Center Block. And the other one is called East Block. East Block is the one that is most preserved with its original foundations. Currently, the Parliament of Canada is the center block where they normally meet is under construction and renovation from 2019 and won't reopen until 2031. So the House of Commons is currently located in West Block, and the Senate is currently located in the old train station, which is a little southeast of the East Block. We were fortunate enough to get free tickets to a 10 o'clock tour of the House of Commons. The House of Commons has a green seating area, and there are, I forget how many members there are in the House of Commons, but the House of Commons members are elected to Parliament. And as the House is the one that makes most of the bills, and they're the only chamber that can propose bills that involve the budget. After touring the House, then we walked along Parliament Hill, past Center Block, and then East Block, and went past the famous hotel that is called Fairmont Chateau Laurier, and over to the temporary headquarters of the Senate in the old train station. Then we had an 11:45 guided tour of the Senate, which has a red theme, and red not because of the colors of the Canadian flag, but because of their British origins. Next, we went to the National War Memorial, and here they have two soldiers which stand guard of the memorial. This is to commemorate all the wars from 1812, the War of 1812, World War I, World War II, etc. And the guards will change place. The changing of the guard occurs on the hour, once per hour. And then we walked behind the East Block to Majors Hill Park. And then behind Majors Hill Park, which has beautiful views of Parliament Hill, by the way, across the Rideau Canal, behind the Majors Hill Park, you will find the Notre Dame Basilica, or the Notre Dame Cathedral. Inside Notre Dame Cathedral is very beautiful blue vaulted ceiling and an ornate sacristy at the front of the church. Directly across from Notre Dame Basilica is the National Gallery of Art, and we ducked in there to see a few of the exhibits that were in the entryway and the nice narrow long hallway that leads up to the main lobby. Also, outside the National Gallery of Art, they had a huge sculpture of a spider, and as well as an AIDS monument that was in the shape of the LOVE that you see in Philadelphia, except it said AIDS. Next to the Notre Dame Cathedral and near the National Gallery of Art is a very interesting monument called the National Peacekeeping Monument. And here there are 3 soldiers or peacekeepers, and as you approach the monument, you go through like this little maze or incline ramp of broken up concrete representing the destruction of war. After briefly exploring the National Gallery of Art, I then walked across the Alexandra Bridge, also called the Interprovincial Bridge, because it connects the province of Ontario, which is English-speaking, with the province of Quebec, which is French-speaking. And as soon as you walk over the bridge, they will greet you in French as opposed to in English. Just before crossing the bridge, there's a point called Nepean Point, and here you have excellent views back of Parliament Hill and the Fairmont Chateau Laurier across the Ottawa River. I then walked the length of the bridge over to the Quebecian side and stood on the balcony of the Museum of Canadian History, also next to the Museum of Civilization. After walking back to the parking lot and getting another Tim Hortons donut, we then drove out of the city, across the bridge over the Ottawa River into the province of Quebec. And only about 15 kilometers north of the city itself is the entrance to Gatineau Park, town of Masham, after the camping lady told us about a good place to get poutine. Poutine is a Canadian dish. It's uniquely Canadian. It's French fries covered in gravy with cheese curds. And the local place that we stopped at, called Thai Ray, had some definite authentic poutine. And we sat there and enjoyed our first poutine. The waitress that we ordered from couldn't believe that was the first one we ever had in our life. Then we went camping on Lake Philippe in Gatineau Park at site number 173. Had a nice charcoal dinner and then a campfire into the evening. After leaving the campsite, we went down to Lake Philippe, and Jessica, who's training for a swim bike biathlon, went open water swimming in the lake. It's lifeguarded beginning at 10 o'clock in the morning. And then after that, we drove farther south into Gatineau Park, and Jessica rode her bike for the bike training part on the Gatineau Parkway. The Gatineau Parkway is a paved region of the park that no motorized vehicles can go on. It's almost as wide as a one-lane road, and it's divided into north and south lanes for bicycles and joggers and skateboarders. While Jessica was getting in her 20-mile bike ride, I walked on the Skyline Trail, one of the oldest trails in the park, and it had about 400-foot elevation gain as I walked 5 kilometers, or about 3 miles, and it had overlooks where you could see the city of Ottawa in the distance and all the forests of Gatineau Park in the foreground. Later in the afternoon, we both drove to Mackenzie King's estate. So William Lyon Mackenzie King was the longest running Prime Minister of Canada. He was in charge from 1921 to 1949. And so through the Great Depression and World War II, and Mackenzie King during the spring, summer, and fall months preferred not to live in Ottawa capital, but rather to live in this cottage here in Gatineau Park, which he called Moorside. It was a cottage community known as Kingswood, and nearby is King Mountain, and of course his last name is King, so it was destined to be. So he built this cottage in Kingswood, called it Moorside, and we arrived there at about 4:45, and it closed at 5 o'clock, so we were able to get to have a free tour of the inside of the cottage and see where Mackenzie King lived and met with leaders of other countries. After touring the estate, we then walked behind the house to the gardens and down a 1-kilometer trail to one of Mackenzie King's favorite places, known as Bridal Veil Falls. So on July the 8th, then, we got up early and we drove into the city of Montreal. Montreal, like Toronto, has about 2 million inhabitants, and it's a bustling metropolitan city. We had trouble finding parking downtown, but after we eventually found a spot near the College of Montreal, we hiked uphill to Montreal Park. This is like the Central Park of Montreal. It's a fairly expansive park, and we got something to eat there at the Beaver Lake Pavilion. Inside the Beaver Lake Pavilion itself, there's a whole bunch of lockers where the ice skaters in the wintertime that go skating on the lake there like to keep their skates and their equipment locked up while they're skating. Then we walked through the park to Condiaronk Belvedere, which is a hotel that has beautiful panoramic views of the skyline of Montreal. And we continued hiking through the park to another area called Ravens Crag. Ravens Crag was a mansion that was bequested then and given as a gift to the hospital. And while we were at Ravens Crag, in the parking lot behind the building, it was just completely filled with all these trailers. And on one of the trailers it said director, another said producer, another one said Ethan, who apparently is one of the stars, etc. So obviously they were doing a major film here in the area. After exploring Montreal Park, we then headed down the hill, probably about a 3-mile hike down to the waterfront and Vieux-Port, which is the old port area of Montreal. And there we saw the La Grande Roue Ferris wheel, the Jacques Cartier Bridge and Clock Tower, and the Notre Dame des Bons Secours Chapel, the oldest chapel in Montreal, the Marché Bons Secours marketplace that once served as City Hall, the Sir George Etienne Cartier National Historic Site, and the Chateau Ramezay, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and museum, and has excellent gardens behind it. Then we walked up Rue de Notre Dame to Notre Dame Basilica and the Maisonneuve Monument. Finally, we walked back up the hill toward McGill University and the college to our parking lot, and then headed out of Montreal, driving for about 2 hours east to Trois-Rivières. Then we drove north to Shawinigan at the entrance area to National Park de la Mauricie, and we stayed overnight in a Walmart parking lot. After staying overnight and having comfortable sleep in the Walmart parking lot at Shawinigan, and of course getting our daily Tim Hortons, then we drove north to National Park La Mauricie. And here, this was a very large national park with many different recreational activities. We drove first to Shawinigan, which is not spelled the same way as the town that we were just located in. And we took a short 2-kilometer hike to a little lake and some cascading waterfalls. Definitely this is moose habitat, although we did not see any on this particular trip. And then we continued north in the park to Lac du Caribou, where you can rent a canoe online. It's called Row and Go. So apparently they would give you a code to a lock there where you can unchain your canoe and you can paddle it across and then come back and leave it and lock it up again. So rather than portaging, if you're on a trip between lakes, you could just go to this Row and Go place at each lake and get a new canoe. Then we continued north in the park and had lunch at Le Passage, which is an overlook, beautiful overlook overlooking the winding lake area of the park. Continued east and stopped at Lac Edward, which has the largest beach in the park. And here Jessica got in some more swimming for her training, and then did some biking on a dirt gravel trail there. It was another beautiful day, only reaching about the mid-70s, sunny, kind of cool with a nice breeze, and we're really enjoying the Canadian weather. This is part of the reason that we decided to take this trip in the month of July, get away from the swelter and the humidity back in the US. And as you may have noticed, we like to intersperse our days sightseeing in the cities with a day in between in the park doing training and recreation. On Sunday, July 10th, we left our site at 7:15 and drove about 2 hours to Old Quebec. It was nice that it was a Sunday, so we were able to get parking right near the pier. And then we walked around Petite Champlain, which is at the base of the cliffs along the waterfront. And you look up and there is the beautiful Chateau Frontenac that was built by the Canadian Pacific Railway. And we can then climb the stairs or take the funicular to Dufferin Terrace at the foot of Chateau Frontenac. We climbed the stairs. I got a nice maple flavored ice cream there. And then we walked around the terrace and over to the Citadel, where we took a 1-hour guided tour from 12 to 1, saw the changing of the guard. Quebec is even nicer than Ottawa was. Very impressive. A lot of the old city is still intact because it was never taken. It was never conquered. After the Citadel, we went past the Hotel de Parlement and the main fountain. There was a festival going on, music festival going on for 2 weeks in Quebec that had some headliners like Maroon 5, Alanis Morissette, Rage Against the Machine, Halsey, Marshmello, and Luke Combs. We walked down the Rue Saint John and had lunch on the street at Murphy's with live music, very happening place on a Sunday afternoon. Then I walked past the Armory to the Plains of Abraham, where the British were able to conquer the French, ending French dominance in North America. Walked through the Garden of Joan of Arc and back through the festival to the Hotel du Parlement and the main fountain. And then finally we walked back to near the original Chateau Frontenac to Notre Dame Basilica and Montmorency Park. After touring the old city of Quebec, we then headed north east of the town for about 10-15 kilometers to Montmorency Falls. In Montmorency Falls, there are zip lines, and you can climb down either side of the falls for different views. Then we crossed over the St. Lawrence River, taking Route 20 east and Route 132 east along the St. Lawrence River passageway, and found ourselves a nice place to boondock in a municipal park just off the water. So this concludes the city part of our Canadian tour. After this, we're going to be going out the Gaspé Peninsula and to the Bay of Fundy, then Prince Edward Island and Nova Scotia. Thank you for watching our video. Please click the subscribe button in the lower right hand corner.